Over the years, I've heard people say, oh, I just wish I had his faith. Or, oh man, I just wish I had her faith. I just don't have that kind of faith. I don't have the faith like they have. And so they talk as if faith is like a talent or a skill that, some people have that others don't. You know what I mean? Like some people can sing and others can't. Y'all know who you are. But that's actually not how faith works. That's not how it works. You see, according to Jesus, faith is a noun, not a verb. It's a noun, not a verb. And that's very important for us to see. But for us to see that, for us to see faith as a noun in Christianity, we must ask two questions. Number one, what is faith? And number two, where does it come from? Okay, so what is faith? And where does it come from? These two questions are answered in our story today. So let's check it out, shall we? If you have a Bible with you, let's turn to the Gospel of John, and we'll look at chapter 4, verses 43 through 54. John chapter 4, verses 43 through 54. If you don't have a Bible with you today, that's okay. The verses are on the screen behind me. All right? What is faith, exactly? And where does it come from? John 4, verse 43. After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. Now, Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine, and there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. Go, Jesus replied. Your son will live. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, Yesterday, at 1 p.m, the fever left him. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, Your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. This is God's word. All right, so this story shows us that faith contains three parts. Now, sometimes these three parts come to us all at the same time, for sure. But it's really more common for them to come in stages or steps, okay? So we see three stages of faith here in our story. Point number one in your outline. The first step or stage that we see is knowledge, having the facts. Knowledge, having the facts. That's step one. Now, many of you know I used to be a skeptic, an atheist, and so I know this very well, that it's very common for skeptics to pit faith against reason and reason against faith, right? As if they're enemies, arch enemies. You got faith on this side and then reason on the other side, and they're enemies. But actually, as it turns out, that's absurd, okay? Faith and reason are very good friends. They go together, hand in glove. We see that here. So in verse 45, we're told that Jesus had come back to Galilee after he'd been in Jerusalem, right? And that in Jerusalem, he had done a lot of miracles. We also see here that the folks who saw those miracles, they came back to Galilee and they were telling everybody about them. They're like, oh man, y'all got to see this Jesus guy. He's incredible. He's been doing these amazing miracles, okay? So they're spreading the word about the miracles, okay? Now, this father in our story whose son is very sick, here's what happened to him. He wasn't there, was he? he wasn't there to see these miracles of Jesus, right? All he had done is he had just heard the reports about it, okay? He just heard the reports, and then what he had to do is weigh their legitimacy, okay? Are these reports about this miracle worker legit or not, right? He didn't have to believe them. I mean, maybe they're kooks. He could have said, oh, he's not doing all that kind of stuff. He's not doing no miracles. He's not walking on water. That's impossible. Nobody can do that. Right? He could have easily just dismissed the hearsay about Jesus. He could have dismissed what he had heard, or he could do what he did here, which was believe them, right? And so what this man starts with is the facts. Somebody reported the facts about Jesus to him, and that's all he had to begin with, right? And then he has to weigh the facts that he's got about Jesus. I mean, maybe some of the people that saw the miracles of Jesus, maybe he was friends with a couple of them, and he trusted them. And so their word actually meant a lot to him. So when they said Jesus was doing all these crazy, awesome things, he was like, oh, okay, awesome. Where is he? I want to meet him. My son is sick. I have to meet this guy, right? So he's got to weigh the information that he has. Now, it's important for you to realize that almost everything you currently believe in life, that's how you got to belief in that thing too. See? You did it the same way, right? So almost everything you believe right now about anything, you didn't have a first-hand account of it, okay? The vast majority of your beliefs did not come firsthand. They came second, third, or fourth hand, right? What you did is you took the authority of the reports that you heard, okay? So maybe some teachers in school gave you a report about things, right? You've heard historians talk about certain things that have happened in the past. Scientists have told you that molecules work this certain way, atoms work this certain way, right? You've read books and et cetera, right? So you've taken in these facts that your teachers have told you or the scientists have told you, and then you've done what? You've done this with them. You could have said, that didn't happen. That's ridiculous. George Washington was not our first president. Give me a break. You weren't there, teacher. I wasn't there, right? You had to weigh it. That's what we do with literally everything. We don't have first-hand account of it. And so we have to weigh the information. That's exactly what this man is doing with the reports about Jesus. Somebody's told him about Jesus, and he's weighing them. However, that's not enough, okay? It's not enough to just have the facts, right? It's not even enough to just believe in the facts. You can start that way. That's great. Faith very often starts with reason. You're weighing the facts about the Bible, about the Christian story, about Jesus himself, about the gospel. But it has to go beyond that. That's not enough, right? That's just step one. Because reason can't get you all the way to saving faith. So let's check out the second step. Point number 2 in your outline. The second step of faith is assent. Okay? So first you get the facts. The second step is assent. You believe the facts, okay? Or at least you're starting to believe the facts. So that's what's happened to this man in our story. He's got the report, okay? And then he's at least starting to believe the reports, because why would he go to Jesus and ask for a miracle if he didn't think Jesus could do miracles, okay? So at least he's starting to assent, right? To believe in the facts. Now, we know this man was really desperate for a miracle. So when he says to Jesus, "Sir, come down before my child dies," that word child there in the Greek is actually a diminutive word. So it's like he's saying this. It's like he's saying, "Please come before my precious boy dies." See? So what we see here is that the father is in complete agony over the sickness of his son. And how does Jesus respond to the man's agony? He says, "Oh, you people are always looking for a miracle." Huh? I mean, that's kind of mean, isn't it? So dismissive. I mean, this is quite a shocking response from Jesus, especially in light of the story we just read last couple weeks in John chapter 4. In our last story, Jesus was so sweet with the woman at the well that it kind of made your teeth hurt, didn't it? It's like, oh, that's too sweet, Jesus. You're too sweet to her. But in the very next story, with this man, Jesus is pretty darn harsh. It's pretty harsh. But you know, if you yourself have read through the Gospels, you already realize that when people ask Jesus for something, he very often gives them a response that seems inappropriate or even off topic. They're like, wait, what? That happens a lot in the Gospels. In fact, Jesus sometimes seems downright rude. Let's just be real. He seems downright rude. But the obvious question is, why? Like, why? What happened to our sweet little teddy bear Jesus? I thought he was a teddy bear. What happened? What happened to our sweet little lammy? I thought we had a lammy as a Jesus. Why is he rude sometimes? Well, the answer is always, always love. That's the reason. He's always doing it for a loving reason. He does it because it's necessary. Let me show you. So this man in our story at this moment has no idea who Jesus really is, does he? He has no idea. For all he knows, Jesus is just some kind of sorcerer or wizard. Jesus is basically just Gandalf to this guy, right? Gandalf the Gray or the White, if you will. He's just Gandalf. He's just a sorcerer. He's just a guy who can do amazing things. He's got some potions and some fancy words he can throw out there to do amazing things. That's all that he knows about Jesus, right? That's all he knows. He has no true sense of Jesus' identity as the Son of the living God. None. Okay? So, if this man thinks that Jesus is just a magician, okay, he's just David Copperfield, right? Then at this point in the story, even though he has some knowledge of the facts of Jesus, he actually has no true faith in Jesus because he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know Jesus' true identity. But folks, that's what Jesus is after. Always. Okay? He wants faith in him as Savior, not as Gandalf, not as magician, not as miracle worker. See? And so, Jesus wants to heal this boy, but he doesn't want to just heal his physical problem. He wants to heal the boy's spiritual problem, and the dad's spiritual problem, and the entire family's spiritual problem, which is sin that has separated them from their Creator. That's why Jesus has come to this planet, to fix that problem. Okay? He's not come as Gandalf, see. He's after bigger fish than just our sickness, see. And so, the only way that the father and his whole family will be healed spiritually is if this man can see beyond magic to who Jesus really is. So, what is Jesus doing here by being harsh with the man? He's creating faith inside of him. That's what he's doing. Saving faith. Saving faith. You see, right now he's just got a few facts about Jesus, and since he's so desperate for his son to be healed, he's taking a chance on this Jesus guy. But you see, Jesus has to take him further than that. That's not enough. And so Jesus challenges him. He's trying to draw the man out, see. And so, Jesus says this, he says, "Oh, you people are always looking for signs and wonders. You're always chasing after the supernatural. But you're never chasing after me. Never. Y'all just want a magic trick." Now, fortunately, this man does not respond to that harshness the way the typical American would respond. So the typical American would respond by saying, "Oh, I don't need to be talked to like that. I don't have to take this. I'm going home." Steve Urkel reference. Anybody get that? Steve Urkel? "I don't have to take this. I'm going home." But that's not how this man responds. Instead, this man is courteous and persistent. Persistent. He responds to Jesus' harshness by saying, "Sir, please come with me before my precious boy dies." And so, to a degree, this guy is kind of a little bit like Jacob, who wrestled with God. Wrestled with God until God relented. See, he doesn't go away just because Jesus was harsh with him. No, he says, "Sir, no offense, but I'm not leaving unless you come with me to heal my son." See? It's pretty neat. Actually, so it's sort of like he's prayed to Jesus almost, and then Jesus gives him a strange and harsh answer. So he prays again. He doesn't leave. He prays again. See? Do you see what's happening here? Faith is being created. That's what's happening. Faith is being created. And so Jesus says, "Go. Your son will live. Your son will live." Now, at first, that sounds like a great response from Jesus. It's not. It's not. It's terrible, actually. It's terrible, actually. Jesus is continuing to be harsh with him here, as it turns out. Why do I say that? Well, it's because everything that we know about ancient sorcerers and biblical miracle workers is that the person who could do the miracle had to be on the scene in order to do it. And I'm talking everybody. Everybody had to be on the scene. So, for example, the greatest miracle workers in the Bible up to this point are Elijah and Elisha. Now, Elijah and Elisha did spectacular, mind-blowing miracles. But every time they had to be present to do them. See? They had to be there. But Jesus here is making a claim that is absolutely astonishing. He says, "I'm not going with you. I don't have to be there because I can heal with a word." Just with a word. Folks, no one in history had ever said anything like that. Nobody. Even charlatans, even tricksters, never claimed to have such power. You see, friends, in the Old Testament, only one person could do miracles with a word. Would you like to guess who it is? God. And that's it. It's just God. Everybody else had to be there on the scene to make the miracle happen. And so do you see what Jesus is telling this man? He's saying, "I ain't Gandalf. I am Yahweh in the flesh. I don't have to go with you, friend. I heal with a word." Now, at this moment, this dad has to be thinking, am I really going to trust my son's life to this man's incredible claim? And the answer is yes, he does. He does. Because what he says is this, and this is the key verse in this whole text. This is the thing you got to walk away from, okay? You got to walk away with this verse. It's verse 50. Let's read it together. This is critical, the central verse in the story. "Go," Jesus replied. "Your son will live." The man took Jesus at his word. At his word, and departed. So, notice the process. Notice the process. Here's what Jesus has done. Jesus has moved this man from a mere collection of facts to an intellectual belief in his power and then finally to a trust in Jesus' words. And those are the 3 steps. Point number 3 in your outline is trust. Trusting in the facts. Or maybe more accurately, trusting in the person of the facts. See? These are the 3 steps. So there's a story that preachers have been using for 100 years to illustrate this point, and so I'm going to use it too, because it's awesome. I'm going to use it too. So in the late 19th century, there was an incredible tightrope walker from France who was famous for walking across a tightrope over Niagara Falls. So he would draw huge crowds to see him do this. So one time he walked across Niagara Falls on a tightrope blindfolded. Okay? No safety net, no rope. Just him and the tightrope. He walked across blindfolded. Another time he walked across Niagara Falls pushing a wheelbarrow loaded with weights across the whole distance. Another time he walked across, sat down midway on the tightrope, cooked an omelet, and ate it. Another time, he took a chair with him, walked halfway out onto the tightrope, and put one peg of the chair on the tightrope, and then stood up on the chair. Obviously, the crowds were gobsmacked at the talent of this man. It's extraordinary. It's likely the greatest tightrope walker to ever live. But one time, very famously, he walked over to the crowd with his wheelbarrow. And he said to the crowds, "You all just saw me go across Niagara Falls with 200 pounds in the wheelbarrow. Do you all believe that I could take a human being across safely in this wheelbarrow?" And the crowd said, "Yes, of course. You're amazing. There's nothing you can't do on a tightrope." And he said, "Are you really sure I can do it?" They said, "Yes, we're absolutely sure you can do it." And then he said, "Okay then, raise your hand if you'd like to volunteer to get in the wheelbarrow." And can you guess how many people raised their hand to volunteer? Squadoosh! Nobody raised their hand. He's like, "Oh, come on. You just told me how amazing I was and how I could do this easily. And yet I can't get a single volunteer." Now, do you see the parts of faith the crowd had? They had knowledge of the facts, and they had assent, but they had no trust. They had no trust. Likewise, there are many religious folks walking around today, around the world, who have both of those parts too. They've got the knowledge of the facts of Jesus. They even have assent, but they have no trust in Jesus. See? Even the demons, friends, have those first 2 parts. See? Even the demons believe. They have the knowledge of the facts and they believe the facts, but they have no trust in Jesus. Now, do you see what Jesus is doing with this man? Do you see why he's so harsh with him? He's forcing him into the wheelbarrow. He's basically pushing him in. He's pushing him. He's pushing him beyond just rational assent to actual life-giving, life-saving, personal trust. That's what Jesus is doing with the man. I mean, y'all know Jesus could have easily gone with him, right? Easily. Just walked home with him. And boy, that would have been so reassuring for the man, wouldn't it? But instead, Jesus is like, "Nah, you go by yourself." Now, I imagine that must have been the longest walk that man ever took in his life. Jesus could have easily lightened his heart, but he didn't. Why? Because he's a wonderful counselor. The best. He's the best. He knows exactly how to create faith in each one of us. He knows some of us need a slap in the face, and some of us need a hug. He knows some of us need smelling salts, and some of us need a good laugh. You see? The woman at the well, she needed a hug. This man needed a walk. He needed a long walk alone. Now, an interesting question is, but when did saving faith arrive exactly? Right? Like, what was the moment? Well, we don't know exactly. Okay, we don't know exactly, but my guess is it happened back in verse 50 that we just read, right? When Jesus told him to go home by himself, and he did. And he did. But with that said, I have to say that it probably didn't look like he was saved as he walked home. Probably not. Why not? Well, it's because the walk home was very likely anxiety-filled and nerve-wracking for this father. But friends, that's fine. That's fine. That's not a problem. Why do I say that? It's because saving faith saves by its object, not by its quality. Let me explain. I want you to see how incredibly comforting this is for you and for me here today. I want you all to leave with your hearts at rest today, okay? So, let me give you an illustration. Let's say I have a chair up here, and it's a lousy chair. It's just an awful chair, okay? It's super weak and rickety. But let's also say that I have a lot of faith in it. I'm like, yeah, it looks rickety, but it'll be fine. Totally fine. I'm not that overweight. It can hold me, okay? No problem. And then I sit down, it falls apart, I hit the floor, and you all laugh at me. Especially my family, my kids. But in that situation, do you see that my faith in the chair didn't help me at all? Didn't help me at all. I still hit the ground, even though my faith was strong. Likewise, let's say I have an incredibly strong chair up here, made out of steel. And let's also say that I have virtually no faith in it. I'm like, ooh, I see some rust here underneath this. Oh boy, I don't know about this chair. This thing looks pretty rickety to me. I am a pretty big old boy, I don't know if this thing's going to hold me. I really just don't know. I'm pretty nervous here. And let's say then I sit down, and then what happens? Nothing. The chair holds me. Holds me up just fine. Do you see, friends? Whether I stay seated or fall to the ground does not depend at all on the strength of my faith. It depends entirely on the strength of the object of my faith. Entirely. It depends on the chair. What I think of the chair doesn't even matter. In other words, I might be filled with fears about the chair, right? I might be filled with doubts about it. But how much faith do I need in the chair in order for it to hold me up? The answer is just enough to sit down. That's it. That's it. Just enough to sit down. You could put it this way. You could say, just a mustard seed's worth. Just a mustard seed's worth. That's all. So, friend, you say that your faith is not perfect. That's okay. The object of your faith is perfect. And that's all that matters. All that matters is that Jesus is perfect. Your faith is not strong. That's okay. All that matters is that the object of your faith is strong. In fact, he's the strongest there is. I mean, think about it. How much faith did this guy need in order for him to get saving faith? Just enough to walk home. Just enough to turn around and walk home. Just a mustard seed's worth. On the way home, he could have had all kinds of doubts, right? All kinds of fears. Maybe he didn't even really expect his son to be healed when he arrived home. But his son was healed anyway. Don't you see how comforting this is? You're not saved by the strength of your faith. You're saved by the object of your faith. See? It's the object of your faith that saves you, not your strength. So when this man gets home, he trusted in Jesus. Big time, baby. And you know why? Because when he saw with his own eyes his son healthy and alive, he knew two things. Two things were true. He knew that Jesus was Yahweh. Jesus was divine after all, because he healed with just a word. He didn't even have to be there. And he knew that Jesus loved him. Jesus loved him. But you and I, we have way better evidence for Jesus' divinity and his love for us, don't we? Way better. It's called the gospel. See? It's called the gospel. Friends, none of us deserve to be saved. None of us are living the lives that we ought to live. Nobody. I'll raise my hand the highest. Nobody. We're not even living up to our own standards of morality, let alone God's standards. We don't deserve this. And neither the Father nor his Son in our story deserved it either. So, why did Jesus save them then? Grace! That's why. Grace. And not just any old kind of grace, specifically gospel grace. Gospel grace. You see, I like to think this about this story. I like to think that as the man walked away from Jesus, I like to think that Jesus thought to himself as he watched him, my friend, you're not going to lose your son because my father's going to lose his son. You see, in this story, the father's agony is obvious. Losing a child, of course, is a nightmare. It's absolute agony for a parent. But somehow, the great mystery of the gospel is that on the cross, God the Father and God the Son lost each other. And they did it deliberately. Deliberately. So that your sins, my sins, this father's sins, his son's sins, his whole family's sins could be forgiven and washed away forever. And y'all do know Jesus still heals with the word, right? He still heals with the word. What's the word? The word is the word of the gospel that says, all your sins are forgiven through the death and resurrection of Jesus. That's the word. What a word it is. It's the word that still heals us.